I still remember the sound of the envelope hitting the floor. It slipped from my hand before my mind could catch up. Thick paper, heavy, official. My name printed in sharp black letters. Maya Carter, defendant. I stood in my apartment kitchen, barefoot on cold tile, staring at words that refused to settle into meaning. Filed by my parents. Civil lawsuit. Financial damages. Court summons. My parents had hired a lawyer to sue me. Not because I stole. Not because I owed them money. Not because I broke any law. They were suing me because I stopped giving. My hands shook as I picked the papers up. I read them slowly, line by line. Each sentence felt detached from reality. Claims about unpaid loans that never existed. Accusations of broken promises I never made. A narrative where I was unstable, irresponsible, and greedy. I felt stripped, exposed, like my private life had been dragged into the open without my consent. I sat down at the kitchen table and stared at the wall. My heart raced. My chest felt tight. I thought of every time I helped them. Rent money, medical bills, groceries, emergencies that were never really emergencies. I had said yes for years. I said yes when they asked for help with utilities. I said yes when my mother cried on the phone. I said yes when my father reminded me of everything they had done for me as a child. I said yes when my sibling needed help again. I stopped saying yes 3 months ago. That was the problem. Growing up, I learned early that my role was to stay quiet and be useful. I was not the child who got praised. I was not the child who got defended. I was the one who adjusted, the one who apologized, the one who filled gaps. My sibling was different. They were fragile. They needed support. They needed understanding. Mistakes were explained away. Anger was tolerated. Failure was protected. I was expected to endure. When I moved out, I thought distance would change things. It did not. The requests followed me. The guilt followed me. The pressure followed me. If I hesitated, I was reminded of sacrifices. If I asked questions, I was accused of being ungrateful. When I finally said I could not help anymore, the silence was immediate. No calls, no messages, no concern. Then the papers arrived. I remember calling my mother. My voice cracked. I asked her if this was a mistake. She sounded calm, almost relieved. She said this was necessary. She said I left them no choice. She said I needed to be taught responsibility. That word stayed with me. Responsibility. I was responsible when they needed money. Responsible when they needed emotional support. Responsible when no one else stepped in. Now I was irresponsible for setting a boundary. Within a week, the impact became real. I had to hire a lawyer. Retainers drained my savings. Every email from their attorney felt like another accusation, another attempt to make me feel small. They demanded documents, bank statements, old messages, proof of innocence for things I never did. Friends started asking questions. Some were careful, some were curious. News travels fast when legal words are involved. I could feel the judgment in small pauses, in changed tones. I stopped sleeping through the night. I replayed conversations from years ago, wondering how they could be twisted. I checked my bank account daily, watching numbers fall. My parents stayed quiet. In public, they acted composed, concerned, victimized. I saw photos online, family gatherings, smiles, comments about strength and faith. No one mentioned my name. Every delay in the case cost me more money. Every motion extended the pain. My lawyer was honest. He said the claims were weak. He also said weak cases can still ruin people financially. That was when I understood the goal. They were not trying to win. They were trying to drain me. I cried alone in my apartment one night, sitting on the floor with my back against the couch. I felt like a child again, cornered, blamed, powerless. But something else surfaced beneath the fear. Clarity. This was not love gone wrong. This was control refusing to let go. This was punishment for independence. This was retaliation for boundaries. I stopped calling them. I stopped explaining myself. I gathered every document calmly. I followed my lawyer's instructions. I showed up to every meeting prepared. If they wanted to bankrupt me in front of everyone, they would have to do it in daylight. And I would stand there and let the truth speak when the time came. The weeks after that decision moved slowly. Each day felt stretched. Time dragged, but the pressure never eased. My lawyer asked for everything: bank records, old text messages, emails going back years, proof of payments, proof of intent, proof that I had never agreed to what my parents now claimed. I gave him boxes of information, digital folders, screenshots, receipts I never thought I would need. Every file told the same story. I helped voluntarily. I was never repaid. I never signed anything. He reviewed it quietly. Then he looked at me and said their case was thin. That should have comforted me. It did not. Thin cases still cost money. Thin cases still destroy reputations. Thin cases still exhaust people until they settle, just to survive. My parents knew that. Court dates were set and moved. Motions were filed and delayed. Every extension meant another invoice, another withdrawal from my savings, another reminder that this was not about justice. It was about pressure. I started budgeting in ways I never had before. I canceled subscriptions. I stopped eating out. I avoided social plans, not because I could not afford one dinner, because I did not know what the next month would bring. At work, I struggled to focus. I smiled through meetings. I answered emails. Inside, my mind stayed in courtrooms I had not entered yet. I imagined questions, accusations, public judgment. I noticed how alone this kind of battle feels. People say they support you, then they step back. Legal conflict makes people uncomfortable. It forces them to pick sides or stay neutral. Most choose distance. My parents did not distance themselves. They became visible. They spoke to relatives. They shared their version of events, a concerned tone, a narrative about being abandoned by their child, about being financially harmed, about having no choice but to protect themselves. Some family members reached out to me, carefully, asking what happened. Others went silent. I knew what that silence meant. I was being framed. One afternoon, I received a copy of a filing from their lawyer. I read it slowly. It described me as aggressive, manipulative, financially reckless, someone who promised support and then withdrew it without warning. I laughed once, out loud. Then I cried. The words felt familiar. They echoed things I had heard growing up: that I was difficult, that I was cold, that I caused problems by asking for space. This lawsuit did not start in a courtroom. It started in my childhood. As the hearing date approached, the stress became physical. Headaches, jaw pain, a constant tightness in my chest. I woke up every morning already tired. My lawyer prepared me for what would happen. He explained the process, who would speak, what questions might be asked, what not to say. He also warned me. He said judges notice patterns. They notice intent. They notice when a case exists to punish rather than resolve. That gave me a small sense of control. The day before the hearing, I barely slept. I laid in bed, staring at the ceiling. I replayed my mother's voice telling me this was necessary. I replayed my father's silence. I replayed every moment I chose peace over conflict. I wondered if any of it mattered. The courthouse was larger than I expected. Cold, bright, impersonal. My footsteps echoed as I walked inside. My hands felt numb. Then I saw them. My parents sat together near the front, calm, composed, their lawyer beside them. They did not look at me when I entered. Family members filled a few rows behind them. People I grew up with. People who watched me become who I am. People who now believed I was something else. I sat next to my lawyer. He whispered that everything was fine, that we were ready. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Everyone sat. Their lawyer spoke first. He talked for a long time about sacrifices, about broken trust, about financial harm. He used careful language, emotional language, language meant to paint my parents as victims and me as a liability. I listened quietly. He referenced messages out of context. He described assistance as obligation. He framed boundaries as abandonment. I did not interrupt. I did not react. Then my lawyer spoke. He was brief. He focused on facts. No contracts. No signed agreements. No repayment terms. No evidence of debt. He explained that financial help given freely is not a loan. The judge listened without expression. I felt the room holding its breath. Then the judge leaned forward. He looked at my parents, and he asked one question. He asked when the repayment agreement was signed. The room shifted. Their lawyer hesitated. My parents looked at him. He cleared his throat and said there was no formal agreement. The judge asked again, calmly. He asked how a debt could exist without documentation or terms. Silence followed. That silence felt louder than any accusation. For the first time, I saw uncertainty cross my parents' faces. Not anger, not confidence, fear. And in that moment, I realized something important. They had never expected to be questioned. They had expected me to fold. They had expected control. They did not expect the truth to stand still and speak for itself. The silence did not break right away. The judge looked down at the documents again. He flipped through pages slowly. He did not rush. He did not raise his voice. That calm made the tension heavier. Their lawyer tried to recover. He spoke about implied responsibility, family expectation, verbal understanding. He used careful words to rebuild a story that was already collapsing. The judge stopped him. He asked a second question. Short, direct. He asked why the lawsuit was filed only after I stopped sending money. No one answered immediately. My parents shifted in their seats. My mother looked straight ahead. My father stared at the table. Their lawyer hesitated before speaking again. He gave a vague response about timing and circumstances. The judge nodded once. Not in agreement. In acknowledgement. Then he spoke. He said courts exist to resolve legitimate disputes, not to enforce family pressure. He said financial gifts do not become debts because relationships change. He said intent matters. He said this case lacked merit. The words landed quietly. No drama. No lecture. Dismissed. Just like that, I felt my body release something it had been holding for months. My hands stopped shaking. My chest loosened. I did not smile. I did not cry. I breathed. The judge stood. The session ended. People began to move. My parents stayed seated for a moment too long. When they stood, they did not look at me. Family members avoided my eyes. A few looked uncomfortable. A few looked embarrassed. No one spoke to me. That was fine. Outside the courtroom, my lawyer shook my hand. He said I handled it well. He said I should consider seeking recovery of legal costs. I nodded, but did not answer. I was tired. I walked out of the building alone. The air outside felt different, lighter, not because everything was fixed, because the threat was gone. They could not use the court anymore. They could not use fear anymore. In the weeks that followed, messages came in. Aunts, cousins, people who had stayed silent. Some apologized. Some asked for my side. Some tried to move on as if nothing happened. I chose what to answer. I did not explain myself in detail. I did not relive the pain for their comfort. I said the case was dismissed. I said the judge was clear. I said I was moving forward. My parents did not reach out. That silence felt different this time. It did not feel like punishment. It felt like loss of control. I learned something important through all of this. Closure does not come from confrontation. It comes from clarity, from seeing patterns without denial, from accepting that some people will harm you to keep power. I did not win money. I did not gain approval. I gained boundaries that held. I no longer answer calls that demand instead of ask. I no longer explain why I say no. I no longer confuse guilt with love. If they ever speak my name again, it will not be in a courtroom. And if they never do, that is fine too.